Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, maybe in the middle of the night, who knows? But this is Dr. Michael Connelly. I am practicing chiropractor at the Center for Healing Arts in Limerick, and we are going to do chiropractic care for the sports injury recovery. So I wanted to put this presentation out because understanding chiropractic is one thing, and understanding how chiropractic can work for you is another thing. So I put together a little PowerPoint presentation to talk about that. This is one of the body signals workshops that we do every month at our office at the Center for Healing Arts, where my practice, Connelly Chiropractic, is located. Been a chiropractor, practicing chiropractor for 31 years. For those of you that are new that might be viewing this, and we'll get into this. So let's get going and see if I can make this thing work. I'm going to move forward. Now let's back up, just because I want to get going. So keep your game in full swing with chiropractic care. So, the fact that what we're talking about here as far as chiropractic, and what's interesting is in what chiropractic does, they just think a bone out of place. But the reality is the bone out of place is called the subluxation, and subluxations basically cause pressure to the nerves on the spine, which then actually interferes with the proper impulses from the brain, the body. And it's important because from the standpoint of how athletes have used chiropractic over the years, there's been some of the greatest athletes that were never known that have used chiropractors, and not only from the sports performance perspective, but also from the standpoint of the healing process. So let's move forward and talk a little bit more. So what's chiropractic? I sort of already talked about it a little bit. Simply removes things that interfere with the body's natural healing ability. When I became a chiropractic student, I was watching the president of our university, and there were almost 4,000 students in this big auditorium. And the president of the university grabbed his keys, put it out in front of him, and he dropped his keys. And he picked up the keys again, and he said, "So how many of you want to bet that if I drop these keys, they're going to fall to the ground again?" And of course, everybody raised their hand and said that would happen because it's the law of gravity, right? The most important part about that concept is how our body works. And our body has this innate ability to heal itself. It's a law, okay? You have a cut on your finger, your body's going to heal itself. Now, what's interesting is how one person heals faster than another and whatnot. Now, watch. When we talk about how chiropractic is, and from the standpoint of injuries, it's easy to talk about back injuries, neck injuries, and whatnot. Well, what about sports, and how the sports injury keeps us from, performing the way we really want to perform? So the whole approach is to understand the root cause of where injuries that happen cause a problem in the body. And, we can say, oh, well, it's the biceps tendon or it's my rotator cuff. Well, the interesting part about how I've experienced chiropractic and sports injuries is the person that I meet that comes into the office and they say, oh, well, my history was originally my shoulder problem. And my shoulder problem has kept me from, playing tennis or playing baseball or throwing a ball, catching a ball, anything with the shoulder, right? And then what's interesting is they will tell me, oh, well, I went to physical therapy and I learned exercises and we let the shoulder heal and I continue to do. But then they start telling me, well, interestingly, my shoulder keeps coming back. And, I do the exercises. Now I have a shoulder that's got lots of chronic wear and tear to it, but yet the exercises don't work anymore. And as a chiropractor, we're going to say, well, where do the nerves from the shoulder originate? All the muscles that make up the rotator cuff. And sure enough, we follow them back, and guess where they are? Coming out of the spine. It's where in chiropractic, we're looking at what's the relationship of the body part and where does it get its nerve energy from? The concept of brain body part, that brain nervous system body part connection. And there's so many other variables with that on, the God-given. We always talk about the ability of an athlete. It goes off of three things, right? For example, the golf game. It would be the athletic ability of that athlete, that hand-eye coordination. We know some people just have the gift of amazing hand-eye coordination, right? And we could say that's one factor. The next factor with the golfer is what's in the bag. Does he have crap equipment that he bought at the local Walmart, or did he get, the high-end, custom fitted golf clubs that are perfectly attuned to grip, shaft, and club head for club head speed to give the best optimal ball flight as far as how it would perform. So, right, first two things, the athletic ability and then the equipment. But the third thing is probably the thing that most people don't really take into consideration. It's that athlete and every little thing that has ever happened to them from their health history perspective. The athlete, say two athletes that are of equal athletic performance and equal athletic credentials, but the one guy's got a history of a rotator cuff, and the other guy's got no history of rotator cuff. Both those guys say they're pitchers in baseball, and a team's going to spend lots of money on one of those players. They both have the great credentials. Who do you think they're going to spend money on? The one that doesn't have the shoulder history, because there's the injury history. And studies and all the career and data and records show that the older the player gets, the less performance he has. Based on what? Based on who he is from his athletic performance and his injury history. I mean, not very many pitchers pitch into their 40s, but when they do, usually there's a phenomenal person there. Nolan Ryan, one of the greatest pitchers in baseball, had chiropractor. And, most people don't know about it, but as he got older, he had to work harder on his body. Guess what he used? Chiropractic. So it removes that interference with the body's performance. Ready? Yeah. Don't let your injury keep you on the sidelines. Exactly. This whole idea of the fact that injuries to an athlete's performance and the importance of effective recovery strategies. So when I sit down with a patient, and if it's an athlete, I usually want to know their history. I want to show you my problem, doc. It's right here. This is where the problem is. And I go, stop. I'll get to the problem. What I want to talk about is, tell me about your history. How did we get here today? Yesterday, I sat with a patient and they were almost upset that I wouldn't talk about why they were in the office. What I wanted to talk about was the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years of what evolved. And in this circumstance, I was dealing with an older individual who had had a knee replacement 5 years ago. And then he told me about his whole history of where he would have back problems and shoulder problems and neck problems. And he told me about all his experiences with physical therapy and orthopedist and finally surgeries. And a friend of him thought that he'd come to a chiropractor, should come to me. And I said to him, well, it sounds like you're a real active guy and you love sports. And he's like, yeah, it's my life. And I said, so do you love doing what you just told me about for the last 5 years? And he says, what do you mean? I said, well, it sounds like all you've been doing is having injuries and rehabbing your body and having re-injuries. And he went, yeah, excuse me. He went, yeah. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like very much fun. And he laughed. And here, as it turned out, on the evaluation, when they did the knee surgery, it created imbalance in his hips, which then when we took the x-ray, showed us the wear patterns of the last 5 years. Not only that, but the last 12 years where the knee problem actually started. So when we get into understanding the impact of injuries on an athlete from a chiropractor's perspective, there's lots of history. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that a good sports medicine doctor isn't going to get into history and talk about all that, but it's what we do. And when we talk about how the body heals, it's the same thing that I was just giving you the analogy of. I use the shoulder as an example, but let's talk about me, and because it's my favorite subject, right? And I always joke and say, it's my favorite subject and it should be your favorite subject too, right? Me. So I got into chiropractic through a knee injury. And even though I just used that example of the patient that I saw yesterday in my office, my example was I have been running since 10 years old. It was sixth grade where I started running. My older brother was a good runner, and of course I wanted to be just like him. So I traveled after him. And at a very young age, by eighth grade, I was one of the top runners on the East Coast, finished third at the East Coast Championships. And then as a freshman, finished in the top 5 at the state championships, and then won the state title my sophomore year in the 3,200 meters. My junior year, I was an All-American, top 5 in the country in cross country. My senior year, I was number 2 and in the country at nationals and cross country. Got a scholarship, went off to college, ran at West Virginia University, was a top athlete on our team. And my senior year, I qualified for the Olympic trials. I was the number 3 American male at 10,000 meters in 1988. And 6 months before the trials, I developed knee pain. I couldn't run for more than 10 minutes without my leg really being painful, locking up, almost dysfunctional, right? And back then in 1987, they didn't have MRI machines, but they had this new procedure called arthroscopic surgery. And prior to that, in 87, I don't know if anybody really remembers, back in 1984, Joan Benoit won the first women's marathon at the Olympics in Los Angeles. And 2 months before the Olympics, she had one of the first arthroscopic procedures ever done. Well, let me tell you, 3 years later, I get arthroscopic surgery to my knee, and my guy wasn't that good because I couldn't even bend my leg for 2 months after he was done with me. And I had more problems. But by the way, when he went into my knee, he said there was nothing wrong with it. Told me that I must not really want to compete. And of course, that didn't work for me. So a friend of mine, like a lot of people that come to me, said, hey, why don't you go try this chiropractor? And I did. I went to the chiropractor, and he did exactly what I do to this day. The consultation, getting to know the patient, figuring out what brought them through the door, and all the other things that they tried in order to get results. And he did exam and x-ray. And when I went back to go over the results of tests, my mom was sitting next to me, and he said to me, so when did you fall on your butt? And I was like, what are you talking about? And here, 5 years prior, I was sitting in the high school parking lot, beautiful spring day, and had a cute girl sitting next to me on the tailgate. And a buddy of mine said, hey, gotta leave, get off my truck. I gotta go home. And we're like, no, man, we're all hanging out. Stay longer, stay longer. And he says, no, I'm leaving. He said, if you don't get off, I'm going with you on. And he started to pull away. And of course, I was, being chivalrous, asking her to jump first. And she hesitated. And then finally, as I jumped, he gunned it. And I landed really hard on my butt. Didn't tell my parents, here's why. Wasn't supposed to be screwing around with cars in the high school parking lot. Well, from that moment on, every one of my running injuries happened on my right leg. I started with Achilles problems. I started with calf problems. I started with some hamstring problems, but never enough to keep me from running. I was always in the training room all through 4 years of college. And again, 6 months before the trials, my knee. I'll tell you, I had 3 treatments with this chiropractor. And I was frustrated because I said to him, how do I know what you're asking me to do is going to help me? I said, all you want me to do is keep coming back. And he said to me, potentially, the problem that you've given me that we've discussed has caused every one of your running problems for the last 4 years of your running career. And I'm asking you to commit several months to treating this. And you want to know if it's fixed yet. He said, okay, smarty pants, go home, go for a run. Well, I went home and I went for a run, and I ran for 20 minutes without feeling my knee. Now, my knee got sore afterwards, but it was the first time I had run after 3 treatments. By the way, at that point in time, I was scheduled to go away to a graduate master's program in physical therapy, and I decided to become a chiropractor instead. So that's my story. And the most, to me, that's my story when it comes to explaining my running career and potentially what made a huge difference for me. So what did it? The chiropractic adjustment, that opening up of the joint and taking the pressure off of the nerves that come out of the spine, and then working on the soft tissue and then rehabbing. Now watch, did I have to go for massage therapy for all the muscles that were tight down the side of my leg? Yes. Did I have to work on my legs and try and strengthen? Yes. But what was the difference was, ready? Improved joint mobility, reduced inflammation and pain. This month, July 2023, we got fire balloons all around the office. And patients are coming in, and my marketing gal is like, "Are you sure you want these? They're kind of big." I said, "Yeah, big and gaudy, because what we want is we want people to understand what we're trying to do. What's our mission? What's our purpose?" Chiropractic adjustments reduce inflammation and pain. Why? How? The adjustment, if I speak much, the adjustment stimulates the fibers in the joint that report pain back to the brain. You know, you touch the stove. If it's on, you're going to get burned. To a point, the nerves in the body can get so confused that if you touch the stove, you get burnt. You touch the stove, you get burnt. Someone can turn that stove off, and the nerves can be so confused that they can touch the stove. And guess what? They're going to feel like they're getting burnt when they're really not. That's where how messed up chronic pain people can be with chronic injuries. I mean, the gentleman with the knee problem, he did it playing golf. He had back spasms. He stopped, waited a week, rubbed some balm on it, took some medications, and went back 1 week later because he thought he had rested enough. Well, what did he fix? Nothing. What's a chiropractic adjustment fix? It increases joint mobility. Well, so does stretching. But we demonstrate, I can lay somebody down on the table, ask them to raise their leg off the table. They can raise it 25 degrees and it can cause pain. I can do no stretching with them, work on the joint in their low back through the mechanics of either the adjusting table or my hands, lay them back down again, ask them to raise their leg, and guess what? It goes 3 inches higher. And I didn't stretch out their hip flexors or their hamstrings. What does it do? It's the miracle of the adjustment. It's the dropping of the keys. It restores biomechanical imbalance. Why? From the brain to the body part. Joint proprioception of where you are in space and time is that influence of the nervous system. It's why when you walk across the floor, your foot's really lazy. It doesn't want to come up any higher. When we opened up our practice up in the shopping center back in 2002, right in front of the front desk, there was a little ripple in the concrete, and it was no more than 1/8 of an inch. We covered the carpet. Nobody noticed it. I would tell you, people tripped on that little ripple all the time because the body's amazing. If I ask you to put your finger on your nose, you'll put it on your nose. And if I ask you to put your finger on your nose, you're going to put it on your nose again. It's one of the sobriety tests, by the way. And the reason they do that is because when you miss your nose, guess what's messed up? Your nervous system, in that case by alcohol, but overall, the hand-eye coordination. It's one of the things about chiropractic and what it does for sports performance, restoring the biomechanical imbalance. I already told you my story, but that's me. I completed a triathlon in my 50th year of life. It was a half Ironman. I got 4th place in Miss Nationals by 40 seconds. And the reason is I tripped over a root in the woods and I was cramping up, but I missed 3rd place, Miss Nationals by 40 seconds. Most case studies that talk about chiropractic show improvement in sports performance from the standpoint of improvement in the mechanics and improvement of the statistics that are measured in sports performance. So it's amazing. I mean, Joe Montana, I use that as an example. Brett Favre, use it as an example. By the way, Aaron Rodgers' father is a chiropractor. And part of the reason why everybody thinks Aaron Rodgers is a Fruit Loop is because he believes in the body's ability to heal itself. And he said that during the pandemic, which is why he didn't get the vaccine. That's another story for another day, by the way. But yeah, it's all about where chiropractic has been and what it's done for athletes all around the world, for that matter. Rehab and exercise programs, just like I talked about it. Your chiropractor can recommend exercises, stretches to help you recover. Hey, by the way, back to that patient yesterday that said, well, doc, during the golf, I was trying to touch the ground and touch my toes. I said, well, you're touching the toes. All that's really doing is stretching out your hiney and your hamstrings. Your problem's in your pelvis. And then when we further found out, it was in the fact that his leg length was 3/8 of an inch difference, because when they put the knee in his leg, they made it longer. It's crazy. No one had checked that for him. No one. 5 years and no one had checked it. So from that standpoint, exercises and stretches. I will tell people that if posture is very much important to be healthy, posture is what we fight against when we end up doing anything that we do, from sitting at a desk to working on a loading dock, to hitting a tennis ball, to hitting a golf ball or a baseball or a football. So from that standpoint, from the standpoint of rehab and exercise, seeking to restore function and seeking to restore the communication of the body's inherent sports ability from that perspective. So custom exercises that are designed, by the way, there's no way better to see posture than taking an x-ray. No way better. We can actually measure it. And in our office, we're known as a corrective chiropractic office. We'll measure the problems in the spine. It's so funny because when I sit down and talk to people, I let them know that correction takes place over time. You didn't get this way overnight. But in 3 months of aggressive rehab, we'll go back and re-x-ray, and we'll make 25 to 30% correction. And from that standpoint, influence performance, not only in sports, but in your regular activities of daily living. Nutrition and lifestyle. One thing about being a chiropractor is we are the largest natural drugless profession in the world. And from that standpoint, healthy nutrition and all the things that are part of that. Well, where are you going with this, doc? All right, well, digestive issues actually have nerve-based relationships with subluxations in the spine. Here's the story. I started chiropractic, and growing up as a kid, I used to think that the Connelly men all carried Rolaids. My dad would tell me to go upstairs and grab his keys, wallet, and cigarettes and Rolaids off the dining room table, which my dad would place his stuff every night when he would come home. And to this day, I placed my stuff on the kitchen table, and my wife rolls her eyes and says, put it in the basket over by the door. I still do those things like my dad. But I also thought, wow, most Connelly men must carry Rolaids, because I always got acid indigestion after my mom's cooking on Sunday after church. And I thought that it was just what we did. Well, I got to chiropractic school, only I had my wallet, my keys, and Rolaids, no smokers. I was a runner, right? And I noticed that after about 4 months at chiropractic school, I had gotten there in August. So I guess it was about 3. You donate your body to science when you're a chiropractic student, allowing the upperclassmen to work on you. I noticed right before I went home for Thanksgiving holiday, I was carrying around an old pack of Rolaids. It was such a habit, but I wasn't using them. Come to find out that one of the areas on my spine that were being adjusted were the nerves that come out of the spine that go to the stomach, right in between my shoulder blades. And as it turned out, in getting that adjusted, guess who stopped carrying Rolaids around for the rest of his life? I always now watch commercials on TV for antacids and, Pepsids, Tagamets, Prilosec, the purple pill, the red pill, whatever color pill it is these days. And I always wonder, now watch, does everybody need to take a probiotic for healthy digestion, right? In fact, this morning I was reading an email on a supplement that's known to help athletes recover faster. Nutrition is very important. And I'll tell you what, many athletes will spend lots of money on nutritional supplements and eating, genetically non-modified foods, right? Healthy foods, free-range foods, right? Non-modified, wrong words. So from that perspective, nutrition and lifestyle is all part of it. And we provide guidance on that, and we stimulate. Just like those exercises being better with a healthy functioning nervous system, your gut works better with a healthy functioning nervous system as well. Tell people all the time, people that end up getting frustrated, they've gone to other doctors, had surgical consults, and often they come to us last, where I wish they would come to us first. That's why I'm doing these PowerPoints, right? Trying to get these out on my YouTube so that people will learn. Turn a setback into a comeback. The biggest part about what we do with people is athletes, is figuring out how we can coordinate with people that they've used before. I will work with physical therapists and orthos, and from that perspective, what usually happens is you don't need them anymore. But I do work with them, and I do communicate with them and understand what's going on. Boosting performance and preventing injuries. So from that standpoint, yes, boosting performance, enough said. Boosting the biomechanical efficiency of your body, removing nerve interference to boost that hand-eye coordinated, that athletic performance. And then guess what? Prevents further injuries. This is why when I talk to people about their chronic history of where one thing creates the other, to me, don't be that guy that by the time he's 60 years old, all his parts are worn out, that when he goes for retirement, he's got nothing left to work with. Why not work on, sorry, my phone's really been active today. Why not work on preventing injuries? So from that standpoint, I always offer, the exam and x-ray at no charge. So what you see on the code on the screen here is a QR code, which will allow you to go right to my website. Anybody that ever sees this PowerPoint from now until infinity and beyond, okay, can go to our website. And what this will allow them to do is go right into the part where they can actually schedule their appointment online and get into our office. And let them know you saw this PowerPoint, and let them know that you want to know more about how chiropractic can affect sports and your sports performance. And not only that, being a better, healthy human being. So I appreciate your time. We spent about 30 minutes together, and please look forward. If you're on our YouTube channel, please remember to subscribe so that you can get more information coming at you in the future, because I'm going to be doing it. And remember, if you knew what we knew, you do what we do. And I really appreciate your time and attention. Reach out. Looking forward to seeing you.